Hi, you ready for chapter 3 of Harriet the Spy? Now, chapter 3 is a little bit longer than the other chapters, but you could always just listen to the story and be doing other things, like helping mom around the house or um, maybe doing a little homework. Reading a book in the background is okay. All right, chapter 3, Harriet the Spy. And we have permission from the publisher to do this. She was particularly excited as she ran along because today she was adding a new spying place to her route. She had discovered a way into a private home around the corner. Private houses were much more difficult to get into than apartment buildings, and this was the first one Harriet had managed. It belonged to a Mrs. Agatha K. Plummer, who was a very strange, rather theatrical lady who had once married a man of considerable means. She was now divorced, lived alone, and apparently talked on the telephone all day. Harriet had found this much out from the first listening to several conversations between Mrs. Plummer's maid and an overly friendly garbage man. Harriet had pretended to play ball while the garbage was being picked up. Just yesterday she had discovered that by timing it exactly, she had just enough time to jump in the dumbwaiter and slide the door closed before the maid completed one of her frequent trips up and down the stairs. The dumbwaiter was no longer used, but fortunately had not been boarded up. Since there was a small crack in the door, Harriet could see and hear perfectly. I'm going to stop the story here and tell you what a dumbwaiter is, in case you don't know. In houses a long time ago, they had something built into the wall that they could take things from the kitchen upstairs without having to carry them up the stairs. It was like a little elevator inside the wall, not for people, but for things. That's a dumbwaiter. She approached the house, looked through the kitchen windows, and saw the maid preparing a tray. She knew then that the next stop would be to take the tray to the second floor. Not a moment to lose. The maid went into the pantry. Harriet stepped through the kitchen door and in one jump was in the dumbwaiter. She got in the dumbwaiter. She barely got the door slid down again before the maid was back in the room. The maid was humming, "Miss America, look at her, Miss America," in a tuneless sort of way. Then the tray was ready. The maid picked it up and left the room. Simultaneously, Harriet started pulling on the ropes that hoisted the dumbwaiter. Terrified, she heard a lot of creaking. This would never do. Maybe she should bring some oil. She arrived at the second floor. Her heart was beating so fast she was almost unable to breathe. She looked through the crack. The first thing she saw was a huge four-poster bed in the middle of which Mrs. Plummer sat, propped against immense pillows, telephone in hand, surrounded by magazines, books, candy boxes, and a litter of pink baby pillows. I'm turning the page. "Well," Mrs. Plummer was saying decisively into the telephone, "I have discovered the secret of life. Would you like to see Mrs. Plummer?" Not too many illustrations in this book, but here's Mrs. Plummer. Wow, thought Harriet. "My dear, it's very simple. You just take to your bed, then you refuse to leave it for anything or anybody." Some secret, Harriet thought. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard of. Harriet hated bed anyway. In and out was her motto, and the less time there, the better. "Yes, darling, I know you can't run away from life. I agree with you. I loathe people that do that. But you see, I'm not. While I'm lying here, I'm actually working because, you see, and this is the divine part, I'm deciding on a profession." "You must be 102, thought Harriet. "You better get along." The maid came in with the tray. "Put it down there," said Mrs. Plummer rather crossly, and then went back to her phone. Harriet wrote in her notebook. "It's just what old Golly says. Rich people are boring. She says when people don't do anything, they don't think anything. And when they don't think anything, there's nothing to think about them. If I had a dumbwaiter, I would look in it all the time to see if anybody was in it." As though she were reading Harriet's mind, Mrs. Plummer said to the maid, "Did you hear a creak just now in that old dumbwaiter?" "No, ma'am," said the maid. "It was probably my imagination." She went back to the telephone. My dear, I have infinite possibilities. Now, don't you think I would make a marvelous actress? Or there's painting. I could paint. What do you think of that? Well, darling, I'm only 40. Think of Gauguin. Harriet started very slowly, heart pounding, to pull the ropes that would start her downward. It had occurred to her that she'd better exit while Mrs. Plummer was blathering away, or she would certainly be heard. There was a tiny creak as she got near the bottom, but she was fairly certain that no one heard it. There on the main floor she peeked into the kitchen. Empty. Could she make it? She scrambled down and ran for her life. I have never run so fast, she thought, as she careened around the corner. Panting, she sat on some steps and took out her book. I think this might be too dangerous an assignment, but I would like to know what job she takes. How can you work lying down? How does she pay for anything just lying there? I guess she just lives on her husband's money. Does my mother mooch off my father? I'll never do that. Look at poor Sport. He has too much to do already without me lying up in bed all day, eating. Harriet had 3 more steps before she was finished for the day. But before she continued, she decided to stop by and see Sport. On the way there, she got thirsty and stopped at her favorite luncheonette for an egg cream. It was her favorite because it was there that she had first begun to hear what peculiar things people say to each other. She liked to sit at the counter with her egg cream and let the voices from the tables behind her float over her head. Several conversations were always going on at once. Sometimes she would play a game and not look at the people until, from listening to them, she had decided what they looked like. Then she would turn around and see if she was right. A chocolate egg cream, please. Certainly, Harriet. How are you? Okay. Harriet sat down, pleased that she was known. She put her 12 cents down and sipped away as she listened. My father's a rat. So I have to admit I handled that case in a perfect way. A really perfect way, I said to the judge. He's a rat because he thinks he's perfect. Listen, June. We have to go to Orchard Street and get that material. I can't live in that house one more minute without shades. Anyone could see in. Harriet had to restrain herself at this point from looking around at a new possibility for the spy route. If anyone could see in. You know, I've lost very few cases in my time, even if I do say so. He's such a rat that he never lets my mother open her trap. Rat trap, thought Harriet. You have no idea what it's like to hide all the time. Geez, I can't even walk around in a slip. Her egg cream finished, Harriet summed up her guesses. The boy with the rat father would be skinny, have black hair, and a lot of pimples. The lawyer who won all his cases would be short, puffy-looking, and be leaning forward. She got no picture of the shadeless girl, but decided she must be fat. She turned around. At first she couldn't tell. Then she saw the boy with black hair and pimples. She felt a surge of triumph. She looked at what must be the lawyer, one of 2 men. Then she listened to see if he were the one. No, the other one was the lawyer. He wasn't short and fat. He was long and thin, with a handsome face. She consoled herself with a faint puffiness he had around the eyes. Well, no wonder she won't walk around in a slip, Harriet thought, looking at the girl with no shades. She's the fattest thing I ever saw. Enough. Only 2 out of 3. Some days were better than others. She slid off the stool and went on her way to Sport's house. Sport lived in an apartment that was up 4 flights of stairs. He opened the door, wearing an apron and carrying a dish towel. Hi, Harriet, come in. I've just got to do the dishes. Then what you going to do? Then I sweep. Oh, Sport, you got too much work to do. Yeah, but what can I do? Somebody's got to do it. Once I didn't do it, and after a week I couldn't find the living room. They went into the kitchen, and Sport continued to do the dishes. Harriet pointed toward a closed door to the right of the kitchen. Is he in there? Yeah, he worked all night, so he's sleeping. I got to go to the store and then get back in time to fix his dinner. I wouldn't even fix dinner, much less for my father. How do you do it? Well, lots of times, you know, it's Eggsville. Doesn't he care what he eats? Writers don't care what they eat. They just care what you think of them. Here, Harriet, hold this. I sure care what I eat. Just as she was saying this, Harriet heard a loud groan from the bedroom. She almost dropped the plate. Hey, what's that? Sport looked totally unconcerned. Nothing. just a bad dream. He has lots of them all the time. Writers have lots of bad dreams. Don't you want to be a writer, Sport? Gee, your father could even help you. Sport almost collapsed at the sink. Are you kidding? You know I want to be a ball player. And if I'm not a good ball player, I'll tell you something. I'm going to be a CPA. What's that? You don't know what a CPA is? Sport screeched. No, said Harriet. She never minded admitting she didn't know something. So what, she thought. I could always learn. Well, I'll show you what that is. Come with me. Sport put the dish towel down, took Harriet by the hand, and led her into his room. You would have known it was Sport's room because it was neat as a pin. There was a little cot made up in army fashion, one straight chair, and a little desk. The desk was absolutely bare. Sport took a ring of keys out of his pocket and started unlocking the drawers of the desk. You see these books? These are my books. He stepped back proudly. Harriet looked. Each drawer was filled with large ledgers. One drawer held a cash box, which was also locked. My, she said, because she didn't know what else to say. A CPA is an accountant, for your information, Sport said pompously, pulling back Harriet's hand sharply because she had started to reach for one of the ledgers. What's in all these? Harriet asked, suspecting they were empty. Oh, our finances. What do you think? Sport was getting irritated. I hate money, Harriet said. Well, you'd jolly well like it if you didn't have any, Sport said arrogantly. Harriet considered this. It was true. She'd never had to think about it. Well, gee, Sport, what do you like to do this? Is it just a lot of math? Well, the math isn't hard. That's not it. I can't explain. Don't you know what I mean? Then you know where everything is. Oh, said Harriet, who didn't understand at all. I mean, see, my father gets a check, and if I don't take it, then the next day it's gone, and he just throws up his hands and goes in his room and shuts the door. Then we don't eat. Really? Really. This way I take the check and I cash it, and I plan what to do with the money, piece by piece, and then we have enough to eat. See? Yeah, that's very sensible. Well, I don't know what would have happened to us if I hadn't started doing that. Yeah. Gee, I never knew this about you, Sport. Sport kind of kicked a foot around on the floor. Then they both felt embarrassed. So Sport went back into the kitchen, and Harriet in the living room seized the opportunity to try to see through the keyhole into Sport's father's room. She saw nothing but an old gym sock lying on the floor. Sport came back into the living room, and Harriet jumped back, then said quickly, Well, I've got to get back to my spy route. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, see ya, said Sport as he opened the door for her. When the door closed behind her, Harriet stood a minute thinking. Then she ran down the steps. When she got outside, she sat on the steps and wrote in her notebook. Sport's house smells like old laundry, and it's noisy and kind of poor looking. My house doesn't smell, and it's quiet like Mrs. Plummer's. Does that mean we're rich? What makes people poor or rich? She walked along a little way, then was suddenly struck by another idea. Are rich people ever going to grow up to be writers, or are writers all like Mr. Rock with no money? My father's always saying, starving artist or starving writer. Maybe I better reduce. Harriet headed toward the Del Santos grocery, the first stop on her regular spy route. The grocery was on York Avenue, and there was a little alleyway beside it that provided 3 vantage points from which Harriet could watch. One was a window facing the alley, affording a view of the rear of the counter at which Papa Del Santi stood. The other window on the alley showed the back of the store with a table around which the family ate lunch. The third window was around the back in the courtyard and showed the storeroom where little Joe Curry worked all day. She crept into the alley. Nothing was doing at the first window. She kept her body low and scooted along to the second window. Suddenly she saw the whole family. She had to duck her head quickly in order not to be seen. Luckily, the window was open a fraction, so she could hear what was being said. Mama Del Santi was speaking. Accidente! He take the truck, get killed. Harriet knew she must be talking about Fabio. Fabio was always wanting to take the truck somewhere. She peeked over the sill. Fabio leaned against a packing case. A cigarette dangled from his mouth. He was tall, very thin, and had a gloomy look. He shifted slightly in irritation at his mother's remark. His mother caught his mood and raised both hands high above her head. "What did I do to God to deserve to come to a country like this that's come down on my head to raise a son like you?" "Oh, Mama." That was Maria Elena. She looked in the mirror all day and said dumb things. She was 17 and very beautiful. "Don't you Mama me look at Bruno all day, all night, working the store. That's a son." Mama Del Santi spewed forth these words in a hiss. Harriet peeked over the sill. Franca, who was 14 and a complete blank of a person, leaned against the wall as though she had been propped there. Dino, who was 6, traveled a toy car with his hand along one of the shelves. Papa Del Santi turned slowly to Fabio. "Mio figlio," he began in a tired, patient voice. "I worked my life away from you. I come here with nothing. I get a push cart. I sell vegetables. You know what makes a man that sells vegetables?" Fabio frowned. The cigarette hardly moved in his mouth as he spoke. "Now, you go get the store, Papa. You now got the truck. Can I borrow the truck?" "No good, no good," Papa De Santi screamed with all his might. There was a moment of strange silence as Fabio and his father stood staring at each other. Bruno walked heavily into the room. He was a thick, strong man with thick, strong thoughts in his head. He spoke slowly as though the thoughts had come from a long way back in his head. "Let him take the car, Papa. Let him have a little fun. He's 18. He just wants a little fun." "Fun, fun. 18 too old for fun. What fun you have, Bruno?" "We're different, Papa. Let him go. You make him bad if you stop him." "Bad? Bad? He's already bad. Flunk out of school. Hang around, lazy bum, all day. How I make him bad?" "Oh, Papa," Maria Elena breathed softly as she leaned toward the mirror. "Buzz, buzz, 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 buzz," Dino whispered, having turned the car into an airplane. The bell on the door of the shop rang, breaking into their anguish. Papa Del Santi started toward the door. "Customer," he said under his breath. "No more talk. Everybody to work." "Papa." It was only one word, but it took Fabio an enormous effort to get it out. Okay, here's another picture. This is Harriet spying on the family. She's at the window. "No truck." Papa Del Santi didn't even turn around. The words came out like bullets. Fabio slumped, took a long drag on the cigarette without putting his hand to it. Maria Elena tried her hair in a new way in the mirror. Mama Del Santi walked heavily toward the front, following Bruno. No one looked at Fabio. Harriet squatted under the window and wrote out everything she had seen. Then she wrote, "That Fabio may be bad, but I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to be like Bruno either. Bruno looks like a big, dumb bear. Once I thought I wanted to be a Franca and live in that family. But she's so dull. If I was her, I couldn't stand myself. I guess it's not money that makes people dull. There's a lot I don't know about this thing of being dull. I better find out, because I might be it. What is it like to have brothers and sisters? One thing, whenever they yelled, it wouldn't always be at you. Sometimes it would be at your brother, and then you could laugh. What is too old to have fun? You can't be too old to spy, except if you were 50, you might fall off a fire escape, but you could spy around on the ground a lot." Harriet closed her book and crept around the back to see what little Joe Curry was doing. Little Joe Curry was the delivery boy for the DeSantos, and he was always up to one thing. He was always eating. It was strange that the DeSantos made any money at all, the way the little Joe ate. Harriet peeked in. He was sitting there now, when he should have been working, eating a pound of cheese. Next to him, waiting to be consumed, sat 2 cucumbers, 3 tomatoes, a loaf of bread, a custard pie, 3 quarts of milk, a meatball sandwich about 2 feet long, 2 jars, 1 of pickles, 1 of mayonnaise, 4 apples, and a large salami. Harriet's eyes widened, and she wrote, "When I look at him, I could eat 1,000 tomato sandwiches." Harriet heard a little whispering noise in the alley. She knew who it was without even looking, because she was almost caught every day by the same people. 4 skinny little kids appeared around the side of the house. They tiptoed up to the door and knocked discreetly. They were very poor children with torn, dirty clothes and smudges all over their faces, as though they were never washed. The oldest was around 7, and the others were around 4 and 5. Little Joe opened the door. There wasn't a word exchanged as he handed them a tomato, a quart of milk, half of the cheese, the loaf of bread, half the salami, half the custard pie, and 2 apples. They distributed these things among themselves to make for easy carrying, and scooted away down the alley as silently as they had come. Little Joe went back to his eating. Harriet felt funny watching the scene. She sighed a little, then creeping along under the windows, went on to her next stop. And here's Little Joe and some of his food. That night, as Harriet sat in her bathtub, taking her bath before dinner, she felt very happy. She had done a good day's work. She listened to old Golly, who was going through Harriet's closet, taking out things that needed cleaning. Old Golly was whistling. It was a cheery, though tuneless sort of whistling, which Harriet rather liked. The yellow paint on the tiny bathroom walls looked clean and happy. Harriet felt warm and sleepy in the hot water. Suddenly the front door banged downstairs, and Harriet could hear her father's voice. "Finks, Finks, double-barreled rat, 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 Finks, Finks, Finks." He sounded very angry. Harriet could tell from his voice that he had stormed up the steps to the library. "You won't believe the iniquity. You will not believe when I tell you the unmitigated finkiness of these guys." Then Mrs. Welsh's voice, calm and comforting, obviously leading him to a chair. "What, darling? My heavens, what is it?" "Well, mumble, they're just the worst. I couldn't believe." "Darling, here, have your drink." Harriet was standing up in the bathtub. She was trying so hard to hear. "What did you do today, Harriet?" How annoying. Old Golly had chosen this time to start a conversation. Harriet pretended not to hear as she kept listening. He's an absolute inspired fink. That's what he is, a real I tell you. I never saw a like him." "Did you take a lot of notes?" Harriet tried to crane her ears past old Golly's questions. Would she just shut up for a minute? "Darling, that's terrible. Simply I don't know what I'm going to do. They're really going to it up. If anything, it'll be the worst show of the season. They're really they are." "What are you doing, Harriet M. Welch, standing up in that bathtub?" Old Golly looked exceedingly fierce. "Sit down there this minute, or I'll wash your back. Look at those ears. Do you perhaps pour ink into them?" "No, they itch a lot." "That doesn't mean a thing with all that noise downstairs." "Well, I'd like to hear it all the same." "Your father has a very high-pressure job, that's all." "What's a high-pressure job?" "It means he's not allowed to do exactly what he wants with the job, and what he's allowed to do, he isn't given enough time to do it." "Oh," said Harriet, thinking, "what does that mean? Do spies have high pressure?" "Oh, yes, if they get caught. I'm never caught." "Not yet. Old Golly, are you ever going away?" "When you get so big you don't need me. Yes, but not right this minute. You're getting pretty old, though," Old Golly said, surveying Harriet critically. There was a pause, and then Harriet said, "Old Golly, do you have a boyfriend?" "Yes," said Old Golly, and looked away. "Yes!" Harriet almost fainted into her bathwater. "Yes," said Old Golly with dignity. "Now time for bed." There was a pause, and then Harriet asked, "Is it unsanitary to have a lot of cats in the house?" Old Golly looked rather startled. "I always think of cats as rather clean. But then a lot of cats? How many cats?" "I think 25. I'm not sure. They move around a lot." 25? Here's your towel. Who do you know with 25 cats?" "Oh, somebody." Harriet adored being mysterious. "Who?" "Oh, just says somebody, and Harriet smiled to herself. Old Golly knew better than to pursue it. She always said that privacy was very important, especially to spies. When Harriet was all through with her dinner and huddled off the bed, she began to think of Harrison Withers and all his cats. Harrison Withers lived on the 82nd, at the top of a dilapidated rooming house. He had 2 rooms, one for him and one for the cats. In his room he had a bed, a chair, a work table, at which he made bird cages, and a whole wall of bird cage making tools. In the other room there was nothing but the cats. In the kitchen there was 1 glass, 1 cup, and 26 plates, all stacked up. It suddenly occurred to Harriet to wonder if he ate exactly the same food as the cats, or different food. She must find that out tomorrow. She could find out by following him around the supermarket. She fell asleep contentedly. Right before she fell asleep, she wondered who in the world Old Golly's boyfriend was. That's the end of chapter 3. What do you think about Harriet? She sure does spy on people. Peeks in windows, listens. Would you like to be a spy? Do you listen? Do you have a journal? Do you write things down that you hear? This would be a good time to keep a journal every day. You could start right now. And I'll see you next time with chapter 4. Bye.